Good morning, everyone. I'm Carol Mosley. I'm currently serving as the chair of the DEI task force, and thank you all for being here. We're really excited to have Yumika Smith, Assistant Director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the City of Huntsville, and she will be talking with us about implicit bias is somewhat in conjunction with a Smithsonian traveling exhibit that was in Huntsville and it's now in Montgomery, and I have been to see it. And you can also access, and Yumika will probably talk about this, you can also access it through the Smithsonian website, and it's a very well done exhibit. I want the rest of the DEI task force to just introduce themselves quickly. Dr. LaWanna Harvey, I know, is here.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. As stated, I am Dr. LaWanna Harvey, and I'm a representative of Tennessee Valley, and I am also a DEI officer on the task force. Good morning.
Benita Gill.
I have a hard time with unmuting. Benita Gill. I'm a member of the Shoals League, and I'm on the DEI task force.
Darlene Freeman.
Hi, I am from the League of Women Voters, Greater Tuscaloosa, and I serve on the task force with great pride.
Donna Gale Spencer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Donna Gale Spencer. I'm representing the Mobile chapter, and I'm thrilled that you are all here. Thank you so much.
And I did not see, we have two other members, LaTanya Dunham. I don't think LaTanya has checked in yet, and we also have Katie Mae Terrell, and I don't think she has checked in yet. Terrell, are you on and I just missed you? Okay, I don't think she's come yet. So all of us are welcome your feedback. Any of us on the task force would be happy to hear from you and your suggestions and your critiques of what the task force is working on. So I am going to, at this point, turn it over to Yumika Smith.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I am so glad to be here this morning, and I'm thankful that you all decided to join us today to talk about biases and how the impact it is on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to have a conversation about the bias. I'm not sure how many of you all was able to visit the Bias Insiders exhibit. Of course, it was here in Huntsville. It's also in Montgomery, but you will have access to be able to view it online. And I can share that link with you all later, and then maybe y'all can, share it out. But again, I am Yumika Smith. I'm here to have a conversation about the bias inside us and the impact it has on diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we go along, if you have any questions, please chime in. We will have a little bit interaction as we go along, so just please participate, because most of us are on Zoom, and it's kind of weird when you're on Zoom and you ask a question and you get dead silent. So if you would work with me and kind of chime in if I do ask a question. We're going to spend just a few minutes going over about 15, 20 minutes going over the content, and then we'll have dialogue answering questions and sharing our thoughts. Just a little bit about myself. I do work for the City of Huntsville as the Assistant Director in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I work alongside Kenny Anderson and other departments, and I go to fulfilling mission of making the City of Huntsville a more inclusive city. There are many things we do here in this office, from community engagement with community partners, leaders, and allies, to exposure of our city government through our Civic Engagement Academy. We also partnered with the Smithsonian in bringing the Bias Inside us here to Huntsville. The exhibit itself is a community engagement project to raise awareness about the science and history of bias and what people can do about it. It was grounded in research and teaches us that bias is inside everyone, including myself, including you all. We all have biases. It started traveling back in January of 2021, and it will end in April of 2025. It will visit a total of 40 communities across the country. And like we said before, Huntsville is one and Montgomery is the second one that's in Alabama. The exhibit itself is based on the book Blind Spot. I thought I had it here in my office, but it's at the house. But it's a little green book. It's called Blind Spot. It's Hitting Biases of Good People. It's co-authored by Dr. Benaje and Anthony Greenwald. The book describes how we can be unaware of our hidden biases that guide our behavior. It talks about how we are all members of the same race, the human race, with different cultures and experiences that shape our perspectives. We're going to go ahead and jump into it. When it talks about the good people, it talks about those of us who strive to align our behavior with our intentions. The Smithsonian wanted to start a conversation about implicit bias and to help people understand and counter their implicit biases. They also wanted to help bring capacity in communities to convene dialogue that would increase empathy, and they in the hopes of inspiring more inclusive schools, communities, and workplaces. And we brought it here because it was a perfect alignment with our mission. And it was a great opportunity for us to begin to push that needle forward. Again, I am so excited that you have joined me. So we're going to go ahead and get started again. To first understand what bias is all about, we need to first understand why DEI is such a big deal. And when I say DEI, I'm talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And to do that, we must understand the basic definition. Diversity, as we can see, diversity is our differences. Diversity is asking someone different than you to a party. Then we have equity. Equity is not equality. Equity is providing a ride to that party. Once you ask somebody, ask them, do they need a ride? Okay. And inclusion is being asked to dance at that party. You got to have all three. So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we must also realize the trigger switch that started this conversation nationwide. It was the impact of the killing of George Floyd. So with that, these words, actually, they mean different things to different people. And unfortunately, there are still many groups of people within this city, the country, nationwide, that still feel excluded. So the question is, what's the big deal? So what is the big deal? Bias is the big deal. Bias is the root driver in how we treat others. So let's go a little bit deeper. Did you know diversity plus equity equals inclusion? Diversity is not complex. Even within our inner circles, we are very diverse. Even on the Zoom, even in the room that you all sitting in, we are diverse. There was no effort, no intentions on saying, hey, let's make sure we have women, let's make sure we have men, let's make sure we have all different races attending here. But guess what? We showed up and we are diverse. So diversity is not just about race. It's about gender, religion, disability, diversity of thoughts, and so many more. However, representation of race is a key component, but it's not the only type. Diversity, again, is about differences. Inclusion is not hard at all, but it does take effort. It's at the core. At its core is including others different than you in your inner circle. It's getting to know someone different and challenging one another to explore those different perspectives. Take a moment to consider who's in your inner circle and ask yourself, do you need to expand? You don't have to answer that now. We'll approach that question a little bit later. However, the challenge lies within equity. How inclusive are we? Just because we're diverse in this room, did it make you feel included? Understanding equity must be intentional. Wouldn't it be great if I gave everybody on this call a pair of shoes? I'm pretty sure y'all would like, thank you, love my shoes. But what about if I gave everyone a pair of shoes that fit? That's where the equity comes in. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Sometimes we're blinded by a notion that we fail to see the additional need of others have, the access to receive. I need food, but I don't have transportation to get there. I want a job, but I can't afford childcare. Do you all get the picture of where we're going? Equity does not mean we're taking from one group and giving it to another group. It's about creating access. So in order to have true inclusion, we need diversity plus equity to equal inclusion. So what is bias? Webster defines bias as a personal and sometimes unreasoned judgment. Oxford Dictionary goes on and says it's a strong feeling in favor of or against one group, often not based on fair judgment. And both these two define bias as an unfair treatment of people based on our opinion. As with DEI, bias also has different meanings, but there's a common thread: the judgment and fairness. Bias is how we judge people or things and how we use this information to influence our behavior. Our view or perspective comprised of our life experiences, lessons we learned along the way. We typically develop unconscious bias as a result of things taught and observations we made in our childhood, as adolescents, at home, at school, in conversations with friends, even through the media. All of these shape our perspective. So we're going to play a little simple mind game. Have any of you all watched Friends? Yes. Okay, I'm the only one to watch Friends. Okay, so I won't go into the details.
Oh, yes.
Okay, perfect, because it's one of my favorite shows. But it's an episode in Friends where Joey wants to know if Chandler, one of his best friends, his true feelings about his career path. So in this same episode, Phoebe plays a game with Joey where he quickly selects his preference from two options. It's a quick decision-making game, and it gets to your honest answer of how you feel about things. I won't go into details of the show, but we're going to take the same concept and we're going to show how we all have just simple bias. It's very simple. When I click on the slides, it's going to give you two options. As soon as you see the options, tell me which one do you prefer, okay? Here we go. Red or blue?
Blue.
Red.
Blue.
Chocolate or vanilla ice cream?
Vanilla.
Vanilla.
All right. Do you prefer a car or a truck?
Car.
Nobody wants a truck, okay?
I said truck.
Okay, I hear you. Rice or
Rice.
pasta?
Pasta.
Rice.
Rice.
Yeah. Pasta, my go-to. And then one of the favorites we all have, Alabama or Auburn?
War Eagle.
Alabama.
Brian.
War Eagle.
Notre
War
Dame.
Eagle.
How about neither? I just like,
Notre Dame.
Tennessee.
so these are simple examples and less thought-provoking. But imagine more complex topics and how we rely on our preferences, which are our biases, to make informed decisions. So we're going to go a little bit deeper. Dr. Benaje defines a concept called mind bugs. They are ingrained patterns of thought that lead to error in how we perceive, remember, reason, and make decisions. These mind bugs turn into biases. Let's take a look. Check out these two blue circles. Do they look like different sizes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now look again. Do they still look like different sizes?
Yes.
We have no scale.
Okay. Now look again.
Yeah.
What we think we see is not always what we see. A new perspective shows what they really are. They're two identical circles. As infants, we discover who is safe and trustworthy by recognizing the types of people who surround us. We often see that those who we are surrounded by are people who look like us. Therefore, those type of people must be trustworthy. As we grow up, these early biases crystallize into two different forms, implicit and explicit biases. So throughout the rest of our lives, these biases will be reinforced from our individual experiences and the people around us. So I asked again the question, do you need to expand your circle? Visual illusions work because the surrounding context of an image shapes what we see. As in this image here, the big circles, the big purple circles surround the little small blue, make the small blue circle look smaller than it really is. Context is so powerful. because it sets up our expectations of what we might see. And once we have that expectation, we can't see it any other way. And unfortunately, nationwide, we are making decisions about people and policies based on someone's opinion and not fact. So why is it so hard for us to see things from a different perspective? Let's try to figure that out. There are two types of biases, as I said before, conscious and unconscious. Psychologists estimate that our brains process approximately 11 million bits of information every second. A book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, defines two frameworks for understanding human cognition functions. And he defined them in System 1 and System 2, and we'll go into them. System 1 handles cognition that occurs outside of our conscious awareness. It operates automatically and extremely fast. For example, let's say you stop your car at a red light. When the light turns green, you know to proceed through that intersection, automatically understanding, that green means go. So this mental association requires no effort in thought. And because of our ability to quickly process the mental association, it helps us to understand the effect of how we perceive and operate unconsciously. In contrast, System 2 is conscious processing. We use it for mental tasks that require concentration, such as completing a tax form. Rather than going extremely fast, this requires effort and deliberate concentration. Together, System helps us make sense of the world. What is fascinating about this is how much our cognition relies on System 1. Of the millions of possible pieces of information we can process each second, most neuroscientists agree that most cognitive processing occurs outside of our conscious awareness.
Wow.
So what is implicit bias? Did you have something? You had a question, somebody? Nope. Implicit biases are our attitudes and stereotypes that unconsciously affect our understanding, actions, and decisions. They operate outside of our conscious awareness. Implicit biases are pervasive. They can challenge even the most well-intentioned individual, resulting in actions and outcomes that do not necessarily align with our explicit intentions. Because our implicit association arises outside of our conscious awareness, implicit bias do not necessarily align with our explicit beliefs and intentions. This means that even individuals who try to treat people fairly can still unknowingly act in ways that produce inequitable outcomes for different people. Again, because implicit bias are unconscious and involuntary, we are not even aware that they exist. Yet they can cause a tremendous impact on our decision making. Evidence has shown that implicit bias can be activated by any number of reasons, such as stereotypes, discrimination, and also prejudice. Recognizing that implicit bias can yield inequitable outcomes is the impact it has on inclusion. Equity is a fair treatment of all people, as we talked about it before. Sometimes our implicit bias may be unknown to us, but can be harmful to others. Real life implications of implicit bias can create invisible barriers to opportunity, leading us to make unfair decisions in education, which classes we place students into, and who we send out the classroom for behavior distraction. Even in employment, who we hire for a job or select for a promotion. It happens in health, which treatment options we make available to patients. And guess what, as we know, it also happens in housing, who we rent to or whose application for mortgages are approved. The good news is we can change the way we think. It's like adding wiring to a house or building a new road in a city. We can produce new associations, which in turn can create more inclusive and equitable ways of behaving and reacting. Now, do you understand how our circles need to be adjusted? The first step in changing our mindset is, number one, is acknowledging our bias. Take the time to identify what our biases are. Project Implicit is a tool created by Harvard University to measure our bias. You see this QR code. If you scan it, go to it. It'll take you to a site where you can actually practice your, not practice, but find out what your biases are. The next step is to understand our bias. We understand our biases we possess is important, so we are aware of how we treat others. Paying attention to your thoughts and examining your beliefs can help you identify your current assumptions. For example, do you believe people will always speak up when disagreeing? Do you think showing your emotions or crying at work is a sign of weakness? How do you feel when someone misses a deadline, late to an appointment? Do you automatically assume that they don't care, or can you extend empathy and listen to their reasoning? The last step to this is own them. Once we know and accept our bias, we can begin to recognize our own patterns of thinking. With awareness and conscious effort, we have the power to change how we think and challenge the negative or harmful biases within ourselves. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay that we have biases. So let's just go just a little bit deeper. Now that we know what we can do as individuals.
Join the meeting.
Oh, okay. Now that we know what we can do as individuals, is there more we can do as a community? Yes, it is. A lot. To lead to meaningful change, we must explore the option of having implicit bias as part of the larger conversation, and how current inequalities in our institutions came to be, how they're held in place, and what our role as leaders are in prolonging inequality. Our success in creating organizations and communities in which everyone has access to the opportunities depend on our ability to, number one, confront the history and impacts of structural racism, learn how implicit bias operates, and take action to interrupt inequalities at the interpersonal, institutional, and structural levels. Together, we can encourage interest in the topics of implicit bias. We can educate implicit bias from a historical and socioeconomic lens. We can also highlight the ways that current policies and practices create and reproduce inequitable outcomes. We should begin to understand that structural racism and exclusion have become normalized. And also, please don't confuse, we all have implicit bias with the immunity from responsibility. We are all connected. Our fates are linked. We're working toward inclusion is not about helping the communities, but about dismantling structures that exclude others, increasing access to opportunities, and it's about building healthy, inclusive communities where we all belong and can thrive. In conclusion, I want to leave you all with a quote from Dr. Benache. She says, implicit bias comes from culture. She thinks of them as the thumbprint of the culture of our minds. Human beings have the ability to learn to associate two things together very quickly. That is innate. What we teach ourselves, what we choose to associate is up to us. And some things to remember about unconscious biases, everyone has them. They can be activated within a fraction of a second. We can hold biases against our own group. We can hold biases that go against our beliefs. And biases are generally shared within social groups favoring people who share our own identity. And guess what? Biases are persistent, but can be changed with attention and work. So I go back and ask you all, do your circles need to be changed? So who's ready for this conversation? Just me? It's a question.
We're ready.
Hello, how are you?
I'm ready.
You ready? Nancy's ready. Do I got any more ready?
Benita, ready.
Nita's ready.
Judy's ready.
Judy, let's go.
Janice ready.
All right.
We're ready in this room.
We're
We're
ready.
ready. So let's have a conversation. What do you all think about biases? What are your thoughts? Let's just have a real conversation here. I'm going to stop this screen sharing.
Well, first I went to the bias within us with my Girl Scouts. I took them because we have a very diverse troop. So I took them to the exhibit here in Huntsville, and that started a really good conversation because they're young girls. And it made me look at myself a little bit, especially with the color chart that they had. So I was like, oh, I didn't see that in me. So it was very, very interesting.
Very interesting. It was. Anybody else on the call got a chance to visit the Smithsonian Bias Insiders exhibit? And if you did, can you share, how did you feel? What was your thought?
It made you really start realizing all the different ways biases affect a lot of different aspects of life.
And
And with me, it made me look at when they did the color spectrum, how color varies, even with our own organizations, where we say, okay, we're all the same people, but within the organization, you have a color spectrum that it showed at the exhibit that really got you thinking, okay, am I looking at that person because they're this shade? So the shade spectrum, I can't remember what it was called. It was eye-opening. Even for the girls, they were like, do I like her because she looks like this? So it was really good, a good spectrum that helped me to look at things differently, especially within myself and other people that's in my circle, and even family members in other organizations that I'm in that's, should be, there's all African Americans. And then it just made you look and say, well, am I around these people because they look just like me, they're same color shade? And how do I feel about the different shades of people that are within my circle?
Absolutely.
And to look at other people when they're looking at you and you look at other people's circle, well, their circle is all this kind of shade right here. So it was thought-provoking.
Very thought-provoking. Nancy, I see your hand up. You have something?
Sorry, I was trying to find my mic. Yes, going back to before you were talking about the exhibit, this is nothing new to anyone here, but I just always think about the origin of things, whatever it may be. And I know that in my own situation, some of my biases that were sort of inherent that I carried around with me from my childhood into adulthood were based on ignorance. And I think ignorance is our greatest enemy across the boards. Ignorance, breeds fear, and then fear breeds hate and violence. So I just, I grew up hearing some things from relatives that were well-meaning, and now I look back and just shudder to think about some things I heard said in my childhood, not from my direct family, but from, cousins, uncles, and associates. And so I just feel that, knowledge is power, and this kind of thing we're doing today is so important. And I want to thank you for this, but I think ignorance and, like you said, overcoming, what we don't know we're doing is so important, and it can't be stressed enough.
Right. I think you hit it on the nail. Ignorance is the culprit, the root of it. But in conjunction with that is the lack of wanting to know more. It's the lack or the willingness to go get the education, or even just to have a conversation with someone outside of your perspective, your circle, your dialogue. And you're right, we definitely, all of these things we grew up as children, because guess what? When you're a child, you're in your home with people. You grew up from birth to 5 before you really interact with different people outside of your race or structure sometimes. Of course, you got, daycares and things like that. But even when you're talking about the daycares, we tend to find daycares for our children that is either at our church or is in our neighborhood. And so we're growing up with these perspectives because I thought it was so powerful how it said, it begins, the people that look like me are those that are trustworthy. And then when you see somebody outside of you, because, oh, they look different, you don't even take the time to try to figure it out. I remember years ago, my first job was at Kmart, and a family come through, and one of the little boys, who was like, "Oh, mommy, look, a black lady." I was like, "Yeah, hi, I do exist," but it's at that time you really, I just kind of laugh it off. But when you really think about it, it's like, wow, is this his first time seeing a black person? Or vice versa. When we lived on the north side of Huntsville, and when we I would my fourth grade teacher would take me around the city, and she'll take me to different places, just the exposure. And then you go to one side of the town and it's more white people. You're like, oh wow, they live like this, So we begin to form these perceptions and ideas and thoughts. And unless we are intentional on the why and really trying to understand where someone else is coming from, the only thing we're going to do is feed our own biases and perspective and form these ideas and concepts of what things should be. And then we rise up into power in positions where we can make decisions and, influence the policies. We're influencing them based on our own single perspective. A great point, Nancy. Anybody else? Yes, Donna. You on mute and you talking away.
Sorry about that. We seem to be talking a lot about race and color, and it is probably the largest that I experience on a daily basis. But I caught myself a couple of weeks ago with sexual bias. I saw something in a catalog that I thought my great nephew would love because it was navy blue. And I had to check myself because I sat there for a minute and I thought, well, he's got girl cousins it was a kite. He's got girl cousins that would like this as much as he, So I ended up having to buy a bunch. And I thought, you sit on 2 DEI committees simultaneously. And because it was Navy, associated it with a little boy. And I thought, wow, I still have so much further to go. So there are so many different areas. My point is there's so many different areas that I have to constantly check myself, that I have to constantly look at and go, ooh, wait a minute. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
And that was great 2 cents, because you're exactly right. And our everyday walk is we always, and that's what it talks about, that unconscious and implicit, not really realizing we just immediately make, decisions, even when it comes to sexual preference. We immediately say, if we ask somebody if they are in a relationship, we just assume that it's a person of the opposite gender. But that doesn't matter anymore. It's not the case. We have a question in the room, and then Roger, I see your hand up as well.
Hey, this is Kathy Jones. Went back and pulled out some pictures I took when I went to the exhibit, and one of the things it really meant a lot to me was to think about it as a systemic racism, not just racism, systemic bias machine that you had talking about how police, the belief system and the action and the attitude, and how it says biases forged over decades, even centuries, people who misuse power, shape how and where we live, learn, and work. Systemic bias is prejudice or unfairness directed toward people in marginalized groups by big institutions like government, education, healthcare, law and courts, religion and politics, banking and media. And I just thought that was, it just makes you, when you talk about systemic, the systemic racism, systemic biases, it's just, I thought the exhibit was really powerful in that it went through and gave examples, had people telling their stories about when they experienced like gender bias or racial bias.
Yeah, and
If that's online, people should go in and look at the exhibit.
yes, we'll definitely share that link back out. But also, even with that, you got to ask yourself, even with the media, we tend to listen to the media that reflects our viewpoint. But sometimes, especially during the races, when we're going for, voting, the political season, it's very important to kind of switch your station to a station where they're not speaking the way you're speaking, because it helps for you to get a viewpoint and an understanding of how someone else is thinking. And then when you encounter someone, great opportunity to have a conversation, because now you're like, okay, maybe I'm just assuming because assuming based on what I believe. They're doing the same thing. How can change happen when we begin to have those conversations? And yes, you're right. At the exhibit itself, it has numerous examples. One of the things that caught me by surprise, those automatic hand machines. You go in there and wash your hands and it won't come on. It doesn't even recognize. I can say it doesn't, but it's hard to recognize the brown skin. So it's like, oh, that's what's wrong. It won't turn on because my skin is brown, but that's okay. You kind of, if you touch at the back of it, it's a little sensor there. So, but that's something to think about. People who's making these products, even though they're not intentionally trying to exclude, but guess what? It did. Roger, you got to comment?
Well, I was going to say, as growing up, and say like, growing up, I used to watch this cartoon called Johnny Quest, and mainly because it dealt with a lot of science, and that was a great cartoon. But now, when I watch it now, all the villains were foreign, every one of them. And it's like now you kind of wake up to something like that. That's like watching The Searcher with John Wayne. The Indians are always bad. And now, to me, I can barely get through watching like a Western movie now because of that kind of thing. So it's, this constant, I think the TV or media has a lot to do with this, too much to do with it. And it's hard to be a parent to say, look, you can watch this, but I'm going to tell you this isn't right.
And you hit it on a nail. And I think that's what the sad part about now everyone wants to talk about. They label the woke, conversations, taking certain topics out of, the school system. But when it boils down, it's just education. It's history. Why is it a problem to discuss these things? But it goes back to, the concept of equity. People are so afraid we're going to take from one group to give to another group. And that's not even the case. I won't take, a lot of time going into that, because that's a whole nother conversation that really should be explored. And I think that's a huge conversation. We should begin to have real safe conversations, about that topic. Pam, I see your hand.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, anybody watches Ted Lasso? It's one of my favorites. And one of the things Ted was talking about on one of them, it was last season with the darts. And it was, people aren't curious. They don't ask questions about other people. They just put them in their little box and leave them. And I thought it was a really lovely way of talking about that. The other thing I would like to say is I took a course through the Episcopal Church called Sacred Ground. And it was a course looking at the intersection of religion, prejudice, and biases in politics.
Oh, wow.
And it's like an 11-week course, and it's a small group course. I took it at the
Join the meeting.
And it was wonderful. It really was. We read a lot. We talked a lot. And I think we explored a lot of our biases and just the way, you grew up, and that's the world you knew. So I thought it was really good, and I'd recommend that to anybody.
That would be great. Can you drop that course
A
in
link
the,
to it, I sure
yeah,
will.
because I'd be interested in attending that. And I don't watch
Join the meeting.
Ted Lasso. Did you say Ted Lasso?
Oh yeah, it's good.
Yeah, yeah, and he's right, and that's part of the society. We have become so lazy and entitled, and entitled don't just rely, sit on one group. We all have these entitlements, even when it comes to learning and education. We just want to be given the information, and then we take the information we give and we run with it. We don't even check facts. We don't even question whether it's true or not. We just take it and run with it, and we spread it. And guess what? It's not accurate. I remember a saying someone told me, as far as rumors, you can stand on top of a hill and cut up many pieces of paper, and you drop it over the hill, and it's out there. Then you come back and you realize what you sent out there was wrong, and you say, I'm sorry. But guess what? It's already out there. You can't take it back because you failed to realize what was accurate or true. And a lot of that comes from our beliefs and our biases, which shape our thinking. And then if we say it, we automatically assume that's correct.
Yeah,
And we spread it.
One of the things about that course is it includes the bishop going back and making apologies for some of the wrongs the Episcopal Church made.
Thank you. I'm gonna check it out. Definitely.
I put it in the link.
Okay. Thank you. Janelle, is it Janella?
It's Janella, like vanilla. I have two things. The books that you reference, if you'll put those in the chat, I appreciate it. And secondly, I like courses. I like going to classes and learning things. What I have found to be very helpful is if you actually insert yourself into that environment without making your, suggestions of how to change them right away. Every year I go to the trans family gender. They have a celebration. Last year it was nice. I've gone to other events, but I was there. Of course, Roger was there, and being in their environment and not being judgmental, I think that shows a true picture of how you know your change and how you are accepting people in their own space without making judgment, and just seeing that they're people too. So I like to always insert myself into the different environments. I have 5 kids, and I insert them into environments so that they will learn at certain ages, of course. But I found that very interesting, and I asked for volunteers in the other group that I'm in. Okay, I'm going to go to the transgender, and we're going to interact and celebrate, their love of just being people. And sometimes I get no people coming. I mean, it's just crickets in the room. And then other times people are like, okay, I would like to go to that event and just, work with them, show them, what our Congress, our legislature are doing on different activities, different laws, and just help them to register, vote, and interact with people. And some people are very hesitant, and some people are just like, maybe. So I think that's very important, actually getting in those environments and being there, not judging, not looking, not asking any questions, not trying to make any changes, just being there. That's my lesson.
And you're right. And I'll try to get those books in the chat, but I'm not great with multitasking, so I'll be trying to listen. So you're right. And if not, I'll share it with the link.
If you want to just send me the links, I'll send it out with the video link.
Absolutely, I can do that.
If that's easy.
Yes, that will be. And so even, I think that the core part of it is just take people as human beings. Take off and we, immediately when you see somebody, you're going to judge. That's just innate. That's just human nature. But when you do that, kind of remind yourself, this is also a human being. And then the other piece to what you were saying, a lot of times we don't want to go to certain things or engage with other people because we're afraid to see what it says about me. I don't want to know that I even have that bias. And then the third piece of that, I don't want to change. I don't want to put forth the effort to actually make a difference. Everything is great. We're not that bad. I'm not that bad of a person. I'm going on by myself. You know, it's almost a selfish mentality that we have sometimes. Somebody with LaWanna, I saw your hand, or somebody with a phone number 251656 had their hand up.
Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
Hi, how's everyone doing this morning? This is Barbara Manuel with the National Federation of the Blind. And just wanted to very briefly say I truly have enjoyed the meeting thus far. And it is definitely our mission as the blind community to get out there and become more inclusive. There are a lot of times, and someone has stated, most of it is due to lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our mission to educate individuals, to let everyone know that we are blind, but we still have something to contribute. There in some cases where we try to educate individuals, they will, just snuff us off. But, that's life. That happens sometimes. But I definitely have appreciated what you guys are doing. And I hope and trust that we can collaborate even more to just bring everybody, the disabled, the other, the various diversities, bring them all on the same page. And I truly appreciate, once again, one of the things I want to point out, just as something to bring out today, the information that was given out today visually. I think myself, and there was one other member on the line, I don't know whether he's still here or not, we were not able to participate because it was visually. But like I say, we want to educate. So again, I thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And you're absolutely correct. A couple of things. Number one, yes, disability is a huge diversity that people don't even acknowledge. And I love the fact you say you all try to come and put yourselves in opportunities as well. And I think that's what we have to do as well. Sometimes we, even as African Americans, we want to say, oh, they should appreciate us and think about us. But sometimes we have to go out and engage in that conversation, kind of jumpstart the conversation. And you're exactly right with that slide. And I should have thought about that before. Because everyone, if I'm talking about access as I did, I should have been able to have access as far as where others can also see. Just because my screen is big doesn't mean others are, some, and even with some that has a disability in sight, you've got to be very cautious and mind, just constantly thinking, who else do you want to reach? So when I definitely share this slide out, I will edit it so it'd be appropriate for you to be able to see it.
We're all here for each other. Thank you.
Thank you for the education. LaWanda, what do you have?
She's already discussed what I wanted, the slides, and I was going to ask you, could you, amend them and then put them out there? But another thing also, I believe, and Janella kind of touched on it a little bit about judgmental, and I wanted to see what your perspective is in reference to, DEI, because I think if we challenge ourselves to think outside the box and be open to each other, then that could break down and have us to be less biased as we communicate functionally with each other, and then outside the area of just having someone next to us that think like us. And so basically I wanted to know what your perspective is into bringing that type of setting and creating that atmosphere so that we as members with the League of Women Voters and reacting to the community can function. Do you have any suggestions or advice in reference to that?
I think you hit it on the nail. I think it's exactly what we're doing today. I think, and it was going to lead to my question to you all, what's the next step for you? It's definitely having a safe space. It's definitely checking your bias and being willing to say, ask yourself, is that true? This is what I believe. Is that true? Or why do I believe that? And immediately stop your judgment. Just stop it immediately. I mean, we'll see somebody who dressed a certain way, like, oh, I ain't talking to that person. And guess what? Sometimes when I leave the house, I may just run out real quick and I look a hot mess. But that don't change who I am. But immediately, because I have on my relaxing clothes, then I'm less than the next person. So I think when it comes to you all and just myself, period, we first have to address individually. Then we can begin to go broader, starting here, having those conversations, bringing somebody along to the table. I say bring two people, one person that you know and somebody you don't know, and start having those conversations. Keep it a safe space. Be careful to judge. And always, when you don't know, just ask the question. Just ask the question. And at the core of who I am, I try not to judge, because we all are different. We all, whatever your belief system, whatever it is, we all are different. We all have different paths. And immediately when I judge, I discount who that person could be or who that person is. So that's my thoughts on that. I hope that answers your question. Perfect.
Yes, ma'am, it did.
We have, I think, about 5 more minutes. Nancy, I see your hand.
I don't want to too much space because I've already spoken, but something I just wanted to bring to the table today, and I know that many of you are already aware of this, is the issue of how much you weigh. People who are overweight sometimes are overlooked in this conversation, or people who are very thin. And I've struggled with, the stereotype, that sometimes we feel like we must be that stereotype Barbie doll. And I've never been that. But anyway, I just think it's important to be, just to bring that into the loop here. And as the natural resources person on the board, I also have to bring another group in to think about, and those are the folks that are called tree huggers or environmentalists. In this consumer society, I'm not anti-capitalism, but, we have so much advertising to consume,
Mm-hmm.
and to use all these products that are very harmful to us and to the environment. And we're raised in that way. So if you have someone come along that wants to talk about what are we doing to the earth, some people, it kind of thinks, oh, well, they're not like me. I don't care what we do to the earth. I just really like this. I want to do this. And around the world, environmentalists are murdered at an alarming rate. And there was an incident in Atlanta a few months ago. But I just wanted to bring that to the table today, as something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I think you hit a couple of points. Definitely weight, but we also have mental illness that people don't talk about. It's becoming more, of a conversation, but it's still, the unspoken word about how I feel and the mental illness and how it's affecting us. I think a lot of what we can do is don't force your beliefs on somebody else. It's imperative that we just plant the seed, just put it out there and let people take it, whatever it is, but, plant the seeds on whatever our beliefs are. Somebody will come water it if it's worth being watered in that person. But number one, don't get mad. You don't have to engage in a argument or a fist fight because somebody disagreed with your opinion. Just put it out there, have the conversation, and then be willing to have additional conversations. Don't just stop there. But in the meantime, versus forcing our thoughts and our opinions onto someone else, be willing to ask the question, why, and ask the follow-up question to what their belief. And then one thing I had to challenge one of my friends, she at this point, she decided she didn't believe in God anymore. And I'm not, saying what religion is right or not. Like I told her, I said, I tell you what, I'll go and prove myself to be wrong and you go and prove me to be wrong. So you go learn about if there is a God, and I'll go learn if it's not a God. And so when we came back, what a mighty conversation we had. So try to think it from another perspective and then challenge somebody else to learn as well as you learn. So I'm going to stop there because we got 2 minutes. And I want you all to think about your inner circles. Think about what do you need to do next? How can you as a group engage in others? And what is it that we need to do society-wise? You know, one thing for sure, we got to be prepared. It's going to be another social movement coming. I don't know what it is, but it will be coming. So what are we going to do? How are we going to address it? How are we going to be prepared? And one of the ways we're going to be prepared is begin to have conversations, building relationships with people that's not like you. And I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about all levels of diversity, even diversity of thought. Because you can have people your same race who think totally different, like you talked about the environment. Challenge yourself to be different and to learn more. And then I think that's how we're going to have change. So let's take it to the next level. I think that's all I have. Thank you all for joining me at 9:30 a.m. in the morning and spending an hour with me talking about DEI.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you,
being
Yamika.
here.
It's great to have you with us. Thanks everybody for joining. I hope y'all have a wonderful day.
We will.
Thank
And I'll send those
you.
links.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This is awesome.
So Carol,